The Alberta Men's Survey was developed by over 50 men and 10 women concerned about men's well-being and the promotion of healthy, nonviolent relationships. On April 28, 2015, prior to launching the survey in the community, the survey leadership team convened for a full day of research training. This training was organized by the Faculty of Social Work, University of Calgary, in partnership with the Ethnocultural Council of Calgary, City of Edmonton Community Services, and the Alberta Father Involvement Initiative. 27 participants attended, including community members and organizations, agencies, funders, government representatives, academics, and students. The research training includes several modules, one of which is presented here. The purpose of this research training was to prepare the leadership team and research assistants to implement the Alberta Men's Survey and to also develop a community-friendly research teaching series that can be used by others. We would like to extend our appreciation to the Ethnocultural Council of Calgary and the United Way of Calgary and Area for making this video series possible.
Throughout southern Alberta into Saskatchewan, Manitoba, North Dakota, and Montana, there's a lot of rock circles, some of them 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 years old. Just on the south side of Sitka, there's one that's 5,500 years old that a retired U of A professor, well, he started when he was still working, but he's been going out there for 28 years, wrote 2 books, calls it Canada Stonehenge. And we look at those teachings, because for us they're prayer sites. We look at Calgary, we look at Edmonton, and they're in the blink of an eye compared to 12,000 years. So we look at how these teachings can affect us. So by looking at this activity, what I'd like you to do is think of one scenario, because there's a number of descriptors. We can be each of them or none of them. And if we just do it that way, that doesn't really give us a read. But I'm going to ask you to think of one scenario, your choice, and who you are. Pick something a little bit busier, so not just yourself watching TV, okay, because it's going to be a flat week. But think of yourself with your friends over the weekend. Or it could be yourself with family. But think of a situation where it's kind of consistent, and go through and just check off in that scenario the descriptors that describe you. If there's, we did try to make it concise, so we tried to do it at just 1 or 2 words. If it doesn't make sense, just ask and I'll answer. So in that situation, are you the one that takes charge, you're the implementer, you're responsible, you're the leader, or are you more excitable, performing action, freedom-oriented, or a bit more harmonious, dependable, people-centered? Or perhaps you're the one that's focusing on the budgets, being orderly, cautious action, and questioning. But let's take a few minutes here just to go over this one scenario. And then what I'm going to do is I'll give you the answers. I don't need to know your score. I'm not going to look over your shoulder and say, how come you didn't mark this one 3 times? Or who are you trying to kid? Don't check that one off. Okay, this is just for yourself. And then I do have another handout. I usually don't hand it out until you've done the first part, because it may be hard to believe, but people try to pick which personality they are. And this just gives a better read. So we'll take a few minutes right now, do the worksheet, the NESW. Think of one scenario. Check off who you are in that scenario. Because we know at different times we can be all of them, we can be none of them. Okay, and this is an exercise just to share the value of our traditional teachings, to demonstrate how our traditional teaching may be integrated into our contemporary lives, to use these sacred circle teachings as a descriptor of 4 dominant personality styles, to determine personality style as a basis for personal, team, and leadership development, and to realize that we possess characteristics of each of these, and to acknowledge and use the strengths of the collective styles. When the newcomers came, anything that wasn't really understood, things that were a bit more spiritual, became medicine. So that's where we have the terms of medicine man, medicine woman, medicine pouch, medicine bundle, medicine wheel, medicine circle. So all those things that were kind of a bit in the spiritual realm. But our actual words for them call them the sacred rock circles. And the one just outside of the six guys I mentioned, it lines up with solstice, the longest day, the shortest day, also with equinox. And I know today our calendar gets a bit dodgy because after every 4 years we put an extra day in, and after 100 years we take an extra day out. And we think of what we know the longest, shortest days, December and June 21st. And then we kind of go September and March around the 21st, 23rd. It's actually the week before. So it's kind of interesting that we can do this stuff with computers, but that pile of rocks has it dead on, where the day and the night is equal to each other. But we look at these circles and we break it into quadrants, so the 4 directions. Those represent different times of our life, so childhood, youth, adult, senior. It also represents different aspects of self, the physical, the emotional, the intellectual, and the spiritual, as well as different colors, different power bases. So you can go into so much stuff from here. I know at the museum in Glenbow we have something, just a little circle like this, a wooden circle, and it has just a cross in the middle, and that is an encyclopedia of the universe, our place in the universe, and our personal pathway. And you'd given that as a child, and you'd let it develop as you go through. And there may be people still continuing on, but just watching the time, I want to make sure that give you as much information as possible. And I do have handouts. They're 2 pages, 8 pages put into 2. You can take 2 and pass them on, please. You can take 2 and pass them on. So if we look here, if you have that second column E, you have the personality type of a raven. This personality type, this direction gives us magic. The direction is east. It's the child within us. The power-based color is red, and it's the physical aspect of self. I'll describe an actual raven, and then I'll go into people and personality types. So we look at the raven as an intelligent and adaptable bird, generally opportunist, seldom miss a chance to get something for little effort. They're curious, they have a reputation for taking whatever they can carry away. They use whatever they find. They teach us how to be resourceful. They adapt to different situations in a spontaneous way. Their interests are varied, extremely vocal, especially in groups. They can use their voice to attract attention, attain desired goals, as well as acquire respect from others. They're extremely intelligent, clever mimics. They incorporate and mimic calls of other species, even some human words, and they teach us how to understand the power of communication. Does this sound familiar to anybody in your life?
Is that the E or the?
This is the E.
Oh, yes.
And this isn't even a person. This is actually the raven. And I remember a friend of mine sharing, coming through the mountains, and there was a KFC box there. And a raven was trying to fly away with the whole box. If he opened the box, took the drumsticks, could have made it away. If he waited until the vehicle passed, it would have been okay. But trying to get away with the whole box, didn't make it. So we look at this, but we look at the people who have the raven type personality. They tend to be spontaneous in their actions and decisions. They jump from one activity to another. They dream, get others caught up in their dreams. They like involvement, work quickly and excitedly with others, seek answers and awareness, creative, innovative. In the extreme, they may exaggerate, generalize, get distracted, may require refocusing, and without a focus, they may leave and find something else, and they may test the limits. I have a niece who is a raven type personality, and it's already like 1/4 her bedtime, and she's still talking, still telling a story, and it's like, excuse me, I love you. I want to hear the rest of the story. You have to get to bed. I'm going to get up early tomorrow, and I'll listen to the rest of the story. Stomp, all the way upstairs. I've never heard the rest of the story because it was in that time. But you look at people that envision things. If we're having a big conference, who's the one that's going to dream of what we're going to do and how we'll do it best? The raven. They bring us to different places. They actualize different things. But are they going to be the person that's going to sit there and organize the whole thing? Probably not, because there's something sparkly over here, and then you start going over there. And then somebody said something, and then they're going to go over here. So we need a bit of focus, but they can bring us that vision. They bring us that magic. The south, I'm going to come back to that one. We're going to switch across to the west. This is the personality type of the mouse. This is the W. It's the last column. They manage the stores. This is the adult, and the power-based color is black. And we look at the gifts of intellect. When we look at a natural mouse, they're survivors. Their tendency is to hoard what they have because they fear that they don't have enough. This fear prompts them to acquire large quantities of things. It is their way of feeling secure in an insecure world. They may store so much they lose track of what they have. And mice, like most rodents, adapt well to environmental changes and can survive on just about anything. They hold the teachings of resourcefulness. They may dispossess other small animals of their homes, wanting no competition for food. So that's a mouse, the actual mouse. Person with a mouse personality type, quiet understanding of details is important. They may see double meanings in things. They have a gift for perception, invisibility, stealth, discovery, and ability to be unseen. They're cautious in their actions and decisions. They like organization and structure. They work slowly, precisely, independently. They prefer objective, task-oriented work, well-organized, good problem solvers. They ask a lot of questions about the details, but in the extreme, may want to be right and may lose track of what's where. If you collect anything at all, that's part of the mouse personality. I have a few thousand comics. They're all individually polybagged with acid-free cardboard boxes. They're double bagged, and they're in the box, and then they're safe. And there was one time where I left them at a family member's place. I was doing training, so I was out in BC. Came back and just happened to think, because one of the comics I had, which I'd bought a few weeks previous, was a big storyline. And somebody wanted to buy it for 400 bucks. Cover price was 95 cents. I had a few extra copies. I knew something was going to be happening. But I went to go check for it, and it wasn't there. And I know exactly where it is because this is one of the Batman comics. And with the Batman family, they follow a natural progression. So you read this one, into this one, into this one, and it goes back and it repeats. Rather than just read one storyline. And anyways, I knew where it was, but it wasn't there. It wasn't in its place. So I asked about it, and I said, well, nobody would touch it, nobody would take the things. It was at my mom's. There's myself, 4 sisters, and my brother. And then my mom asked me to come to the table, and my brother's sitting there with his head down. So I said, oh, okay, what's happening? And just before that, I was looking through them, and I seen the one before, the one that was missing, was a little bit of a skew. It had been touched, and I know that's not how it went. But, so I got to the table, and she told me, your brother has something to tell you. And he told me that he apologized, but he had it. He wanted to read them, but he knew he wouldn't be allowed to read them with the sisters and the mom. So he read in a place that would be private, in the washroom, while he bathed. And he fell asleep for a split second, and it touched the water. And he knew I'd noticed, so he got rid of it. And for myself, I had to rationalize, okay, I paid 95 cents. And at that time, I could have got 400 bucks for it. Or what are you gonna do? But I knew exactly where it was, I knew exactly the condition. That's a mouse. You set up a conference knowing exactly how many extension cords do you need. What about this, what about this, what about this? What's our budget, what's our bottom line? What about these? What about the parking? What about the plane? What about the ground? That's a mouse that can manage all of those details. And to do it well. And we need them. Because otherwise, we have things, we run short, we don't know what's happening with this. And it's amazing the details that a person with a mouse personality can bring to our activities. The eagle is the direction of the north. The first column, they see the big picture. This is the north, this is the outer within us. The power base is white, and the personality type is spiritual. We see eagles as majestic birds with a powerful presence. Although they can be social birds, they require isolation. They're incredibly patient, often seen perched in a tree, maintaining the same position for hours at a time. They teach us to master the art of patience, with which all things are possible. They teach us to move through life without becoming overly attached. They show us how to accept what comes our way and see everything as a blessing. And they have excellent hearing. They can actually hunt by ear as well as by sight. They have sharp beaks, strong jaws. They remind us to pay attention to our speech and how it affects others. Our words, as well as the tone of our voice, should be examined. We're taught to keep our minds focused on what's important to us in life. Maintaining this attitude removes judgment from our consciousness, and without judgment, we speak with encouragement and kindness towards others. The person that has the ego personality type, decisive in their actions and decisions, likes control, dislikes inaction, may be abrupt, prefers maximum freedom to manage themselves and others. They're comfortable in control, they work well alone, they work quickly, visionary, sees the greater scope, focused, driven. In the extreme, they may be removed, give the impression of being better, and perceptions of others is secondary to the big picture. And we see today in a lot of our society, we have a power pyramid. And you look in the military, you look in the police force, you look where those pyramids of power are, the eagles are the ones that are at the top. And a master warrant officer, he had two responses, Yahoo and oh wow, in that tone. We're doing our training, somebody went, Stephen, sir, my gun's broke, it's not a gun. It's a rifle. Excuse me, sir, my rifle broke. Oh wow, fix it. So it goes, excuse me, sir, fix my rifle. Yahoo, get back to work. Like that detail didn't affect him because he's big picture. We're planning a conference in Calgary, in Edmonton a few years back, Aboriginal health and focus on diabetes. And we had somebody in Saskatoon that was doing some really amazing work and we wanted to hear from him. So it was a 3-day conference and one person at the table was tasked with trying to get this guy there. So he made contacts, he did arrangements, he called in favors, and the guy was really busy, but he managed to get the guy there for the Thursday morning, and it was going to be tight getting him there, and then he had to fly out as soon as he was done. And so he was really happy he was able to bring him here. So we're at the table, so okay, well, reporting back. So yeah, I got the guy, he can come Thursday morning. Well, actually, we're going to do all that stuff on Wednesday afternoon, so just change him over there, and then the next thing goes on. And the person was ticked off. He's like, oh, they never respect me, they never appreciate the work I do. I don't know why I do this. I must be crazy, and I'm underused, I'm overworked, underappreciated, and he was ready to quit because the guy wouldn't listen to him and was taking advantage of him. But what happens is he's a mouse talking to an eagle. The eagle is big picture. It's like, okay, well, let's look back at this. Did you tell him all this stuff? No, he's not going to listen. Well, let's do it this way. Who else is coming? We noticed most of them were local, and we still had enough time. Can we arrange for all of them to come in on Thursday morning? And then this way we can accommodate it. It's within the theme, and we'll switch this other thing that's easily done onto Wednesday afternoon. Easy enough. But if that's not your focus, if that's not what you're looking at, it doesn't matter. If you're just looking big picture, that's your focus. And this is where you delegate. You get others that you trust to do the other stuff to make it happen. And when we look at our traditional teachings, that's why it's a cross. So our grandparents would raise the kids, great-grandparents raised our parents, and it's a circle. We go like that. So I go for walks with my granddaughter and teach her some things, talk to her about some of the plants, some of the medicines. And when you have that step in between, that stage in between, as well as grandmothers and granddaughters, then they're a bit more patient. And you're a step removed, so you don't have to be ultra responsible for them. You can work with them, you can hear them, but you're not judging them. And you're not reacting because it's not something that you may or may not have inadvertently done. But you're able to hear them out. And it's a system that works. But when we look at these, the one that I skipped, I'm going to guess there's a lot of these here. Part of the pack. We look at the direction of the south. This is the youth within us. The yellow is power color and emotion. Wolves are all about instinct and intelligence. They have a keen sense of hearing, smell, and intuition. They're determined as well as cunning, and they use these skills for the benefit of the pack. A lone wolf embodies the energy of freedom. A pack embodies a sense of community. They use personal expression, their howl, and their markings to clearly establish territorial boundaries, as well as physical boundaries, we call personal boundaries. The needs of your family and the needs you have for yourself. Wolves are totally loyal to the pack, but they do not give up their identity. With an extremely well-developed societal organization, they act together to hunt and raise their young. They don't fight unnecessarily, and they often go out of their way to avoid fighting. Sometimes a growl, a glance, a posture, it's all that's necessary to determine dominance. Those who are too different may find themselves out of the pack. Wolves teach us how to know who we are and to develop strength, confidence in what we do. They rely on endurance. They're the epitome of stamina and strength. They can run like 35 clicks straight up. The person with a wolf personality type likes close personal relationships. They have a sense of service towards others. They seek security, a sense of well-being, a sense of belonging. They dislike conflict. They're a protector and supporter of others. Compassionate, works well with others, good counseling skills. In the extreme, you can't reason with an extreme pack mentality. It's a mob. And in the extreme, they may also defend their pack without checking all the facts. And the social aspect. If you work with people who have this wolf personality, you see when somebody goes for a smoke break, they're gonna go with them, even if they don't smoke, because it's part of the pack. We're having a committee meeting, it's like, this is the pack, these are the people that say, okay, well, I'll bring the cookies, I'll bring this, you get the coffee, they're gonna arrange the social aspect of it. And you want to meet, you need to meet, because we need that contact. And we're talking, we're checking with somebody, we turn around, that person's gone. Where are they? That's a mouse. He had something else to do, and so he just goes and does it. Doesn't have to check in, doesn't have to relay. And then you see somebody else looking, everybody looks busy, because that's the eagle, that we're supposed to be busy when they come and peek at us. And then we have somebody else that everybody's going back to work, and that person, oh yeah, another time. He's still out there, still talking, still getting a hand, because that's the great thing. Because even though everybody was there, they're starting to leave, so he still needs that audience. But we look at how each of these interplay. And we look at why we do things. We do things because we do. We do things because we think. And there are times where you do things without really thinking about it. Or times we overthink things. And I should have, could have, would have done this. And we look back. There's a cartoon that was in the paper years ago, Mr. Boffo. And he's sitting on a bed, and he's looking at somebody beside him. He's behind bars. And he goes, well, I'll never do that again. People doing without thinking. Other reasons, rationale and relationships. We know the reasoning, and we act therefore. Relationships. Heard that adage, like if all your friends jumped off the bridge, are you going to jump off one too? Yeah, my response was the wrong ones. Actually, they followed me. We're out in Kamloops. We go out there for the Indian Days, really hot, middle of August. And there's a really nice big red bridge over a river, so there's a place to pull off. But we look at how we react, the raven, the wolf, the mouse, the eagle. And when we look at how our lives are, starting here in the east, that's where the sun comes out. That's where our day starts. That's where our life starts. So that child, we develop into the youth. We become an adult. We become a senior. And we look at physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual. They're all everywhere. Some of them will say that the child is the strongest spiritually or has the most intellectual growth. But for the purpose of these, we acknowledge the physical. You buy back to school clothes for the kids. How many of them are going to fit them in the next grade? Or even by Christmas or Thanksgiving? Is that physical growth? And then if you've ever worked with youth, I worked as a school counselor and I loved my job. I volunteered. I did a lot of hours, but I was paid to be with grade 8s because they're challenging. You're like, well, she said no, he said no, they said no, and you go back and forth. I had some students I didn't know were going to make it home safely. They rode the same bus. I was ready to call in the parents and to have somebody else drive them while I drove the other one. And getting ready, coming to the end of the day, call them in, and they're walking in, swinging, holding hands, the girls. And I'm like, what's going on? I thought you weren't getting on. No, we're good, but that other one. And so all that stress, if they're going to get home alive, and then they're best friends until, I don't know when, on the next hour or the next period. But emotions, emotional development, emotional growth, and not understanding those reactions. Wanting to fit in, but they want to rebel. Because this is my pack, my family is my pack. But I didn't make these rules. They just imposed them on me. So I need to belong, I need to make my own rules. So we look at how those rules are developed, and we look at the new packs we form. I do outreach, and I do training with the city police. And we look at people that are living on the streets. We look at people that are facing challenges. And one of the things, one of the approaches that has failed is trying to scare them. Trying to say, well, you have to do this, warning them. They've already experienced the worst that's out there. And you call down their friend, they know what their friends are doing, they know they're not healthy, but that's part of their pack. At some point, they saved them and made them feel like they belong. We look at an extreme pack, a gang. It's a way of belonging, and it's a way of being accepted. So even though I'm a pure white or pure black wolf in a pack, I'm part of a pack. I'll never be the leader, I'll never be the alpha, but I belong, I have a role. And so what we've tried to do is have people that work with these communities help them form a new pack. And by having people protect the next generation, their kids, their grandkids, their nieces and their nephews, then they can step forward and then they can start to change their behaviors. Because it doesn't matter what happens to me, but I'm going to protect those next ones. And we look at the mouse. We look at, there comes a time where, okay, we're starting to get our own jobs, we're starting to work, we get this paycheck, hey, that's kind of cool. And then we go back to work and it's like, okay, how long till the next one? Because I need lunch, I need to get to work, I need to pay rent. And we start to compartmentalize, we start to store, we start to put things away. So this is for rent, this is for groceries, this is for entertainment, this is for something else. But we become that mouse. We need to divide our dollars, but also our time. Because this is my job, this is my volunteer, this is my education, this is my family, this is me. And how many of us try to multitask? And we don't give ourselves that personal bit of wellness. We look at the eagle, we look at the north. And as a senior, like that eagle doesn't dive and swoop at every rabbit that comes into the field. This doesn't need conservation of energy. It's like, okay, I'm okay, I'm getting a bit hungry now. The sun, when it gets over here, that other rabbit is going to come over here. I'll wait for that one. I'll get that one. And you do it again. We look at the colors. With these ones, we look at the sunrise and the brilliant colors, those reds, those oranges, those fire colors. And even with birth, the birth waters, the color of red. We start off there. We go into the summer, we go into the daytime, and some will use green here because of the nature and everything that's come forth. But we use the yellow, that big ball in the sky, that longest day of the year. We go to the other one, so there are reds there in the sunset, but we look at the darkness. Someone put blue there, and the dark blue, but we look at the black as being there. And the north, let's give it white, from the environment, but also the wisdom highlights that we receive. So if we look at these, the reason that I talked with, when we were doing the planning a few weeks back, and that I'd done this exercise with Lisa before, and it's a way of showing you who you are. Because when we're working with different people, we need to remember who they are. We need to remember their people, but we also need to be aware that they have different situations and different lived experiences that we really know nothing about. And if we can get to know ourselves better, it comes in a bit handier to see where they're coming from and be a bit more receptive. Because we get those calls and we know those people, and are they really in dire straits, or are they a raven that, you know, really likes you smiling and nodding, and they're gonna keep you smiling and nodding as long as they can? Or are they really going along with what you need, or what they want, what they like, or is it because their friends are doing that and it's part of the pack? Or are they a bit more reserved and sitting back and waiting for something else to come along? Or is it just something that's cool and new? But we look at what we're doing, we look at who we are, and when we look at this, we see our family members. Because as is with the child, that raven, that purity, that magic, you know, going to the mall, having somebody with a 2-year-old with them in the stroller, it's like, I want that, I want that. No, what about this? No, what about this? I want that, I want that. No, we're gonna be doing, you can't right now. I want that, I want that. Do you want an ice cream? And I said, no, I want that, I want that, I want that. Finally, they get it, and they're sitting there, they're playing, you're tired, you have an ice cream. They look at it, they throw it down, I want the ice cream. It's like, what's needed, what do they have, what do they do? So it's a bit of distraction and a bit of working and enticing. But we look at these personality types, we look at where we are. If you're more ego, there's skill sets if you want to become more of a people person. If you have a social work background, you're going to be fluctuating between a few of them. But one of them's going to be that wolf, because you're helping, you're serving, you're listening, you're belonging, and you're giving back. and then we look at the other ones. How do they affect us? How do they affect our judgment? And where do we go from here? So I apologize for a bit of a whirlpool. Well, a bit of a whirl. We're just talking really fast, giving you a bunch of information. But you'll notice on the back, you do have an extra one. I do have a few more copies that are a bit bigger, so if you want to use that, you can use this with your family, your friends. And I'm pretty positive from the nods and smiles that each of you knew some of these personality types in your own circle, or maybe looking back from the mirror. But any questions, comments on any of this we've done so far? Yeah?
That was very good, thank you. Around the personality types, can you shift over time from one personality type to another?
Yes.
Or does one stay dominant throughout your life and you kind of build characteristics of all the others?
Your scores, if one was higher and the rest are here, that's who you are, pretty much.
Okay.
If you have 2 and 2, you're pretty comfortable. If they're all mid-range, you're already pretty balanced. But you'll notice if you do a different scenario, you're gonna have different numbers. So we change from being here to being back in Edmonton or Calgary, and we change when we're in front of our family. So it is really quite fluid, and that's why I like sharing this, because we've administered a lot of different ones, and we get these, 4 digits, and we're within this 0.2, but we're stuck there. Whereas this one, it actually leaves room for growth. So if you want to be more artistic, here's some skills that you can develop. If you want to be a leader, why don't you work on these traits? If you want to be more social, what about these? And so we look at all of these aspects. And we look at being able to see as a child, because you can take university courses to paint like Van Gogh. But his words were that it took him a lifetime to learn to paint with the vision of a child. So we need that. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? I know it's kind of heavy to come into a session, driven all the way in and start off with an exam, but it is a self-test. I'm not looking at your answers, but I can work with you on this too, yeah?
Just add, I think that one of the reasons, thank you Adrian so much for doing this, and the first time Adrian did this when we were sitting at a food court downtown. So it was one of our first meetings together, so it was awesome. And I wanted to say that we thought since we're in a collaborative together, we'll be working together for some time. These personalities have either started to emerge if we start to know each other, or they may emerge. And so just being mindful of what somebody else needs, right, in order to do well in this group. And so I would just encourage people to, as part of your conversation during the breaks, maybe talk a little bit about what animal you most identified with, and just get to know each other a little bit through that.
Yeah, and we notice too that in our relationships, because if we're a bit more of the raven or the wolf, but you're the oldest child and parents are gone, they're gonna be back at 9. 5 to 9, you're an eagle. Because you need to make sure they're in bed, the dishes are done, the floor is swept, the table's clear. Because what you step into, what you not like doing, but you can do. Because once you have a relationship with someone and you have kids and other family members, there's roles that you each take on, and so you kind of slip or expand. If nothing's getting done, you're gonna have to step forward. And so you can see some of those too. So you have a partner, look at who your partner is. Look at the roles that you balance out. Which are the ones that you didn't check off, but you would if you had to? And which ones has your partner taken over that you might not like to do? And vice versa.
Just a question, I don't know if it's a good question or not. I say, based on your explanation and your presentation, this diagram is compatible to other culture, or just particular to this culture? Because in Chinese culture, they have a different style.
Yeah. And what we're doing was we're actually in talks with different cultures, different people from different parts of the world, and looking at different animals to represent some of these different ones. Because this is very Blackfoot, this is very North American. Yeah, because for another it might be a totally different animal. Okay?